We're good.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very special guest today, a Hartford Wolfpack alumni from Stratford, Ontario, drafted in the 7th round by the Calgary Flames, 187th overall in the 2006 NHL entry draft. Drafted by Daryl Sutter, he finished his OHL career with 66 goals, 147 points, and 736 PIMs in 236 career games played. In the AHL, he played 196 games, including the Hartford Wolfpack, where he had a career setting of 12 goals, 26 points, 720 PIMs. Currently representing the 2023 Erst Liga champions, I think I said that, Gagori Hockey Club, Devin DiDiomete. Happy to have you on, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. After 3 years of being in Gargo, I don't even know if I'm saying it properly. So I think we can let it slide if your pronunciation isn't that good.
I love it, dude. Dude, this is so sick. Devin, thank you so much for hopping on. Evan, do you want to lead us off with those first questions?
I'll lead it off, and thank you again for coming on. But I wanted to start off, ask a little bit of an icebreaker here. Who got you into playing hockey in the first place?
I think growing up in Canada, it's a pretty universal sport where when you're young, or at least when I was young, kind of was the thing to do, was the pastime, the Canadian pastime. So, of course, I liked it as a child. My dad always was watching hockey at home, and he would have been the guy to take me to the rink and get me more involved in it and stuff like that.
Yeah, and did you have a favorite player or team growing up too?
Yeah, I really liked the Toronto Maple Leafs when I was young, just because they were so close to Stratford. It's about an hour and a half away. And during the time when I was young, it would have been guys like Doug Gilmour, Wendell Clark.
Yeah.
Obviously the style I played, it was a poor man's version of Wendell Clark. So
No, you're like Austin Matthews type. What are you talking about?
I wish if I was like Austin Matthews, I don't think I'd be in the Erste League right now.
Oh God, I love it.
I really, really liked the way that Wendell Clark played the game. He was a pretty passionate player. He was tough. He could score goals, and I always tried to model my game after him. And even as I got older, another player that I always tried to look up to or tried to play like would have been Chris Neil in Ottawa. I don't know if you guys remember.
Oh,
yeah,
big Chris Neil fans on this podcast, dude.
Yeah, so though, anytime I was at, when you do the NHL interviews, one of the main questions was, who's a NHL player you think your game resembles? And Chris Neil was always my go-to answer. So,
dude, Chris Neil was so good. He killed the Rangers in the 2012 playoffs.
Oh
I hated seeing him out there, dude. Oh my God, he's a Met. He scored a lot too. I think he had multiple 10+ goal seasons.
Yeah, no, he was definitely more than just a heavyweight. He could play the game. He could log minutes.
Yep.
He was never going to be on the power play, but once I went to my first NHL camp, I quickly realized I was never going to be on the power play either. So, that was a guy I always looked up to for sure, being younger and in the OHL.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah, that. And I kind of expected the Leafs answer too. Like, I feel like a lot of NHL players growing up are always like Leaf fans growing up. It's always that way. And it's just funny too, because they're usually the team that everyone laughs at all the time. So,
dude, Ontario is so much bigger than I thought it was, dude. Like when you said Stratford's like an hour and a half away from Toronto, that blows my mind.
Yeah, no, I'm just a little rural community just southwest, I guess it'd be, of Toronto. So I'm kind of in between Detroit and Toronto, and my dad always tells a story that after the Leafs kept losing and losing and losing, finally one morning I came down and said, "Dad, I can't do it anymore. I'm switching over to the Wings." So I jumped over on the bandwagon when the Wings had a really good team with the Russian Five and Yzerman, Maltby, Draper, all those good guys. So Yzerman was definitely probably another one of my favorite players, but definitely not a player I could play like.
God,
Chris Neil is still a good one. Like the first game that I went to was against the Ottawa Senators in 2012, those playoffs, and him and Boyle dropped the mitts that game. So,
God, dude,
love that pick.
Yeah, no, he was a good one too. And then actually, when I was younger too, throughout the OHL and even my first 3 years on entry level with New York. I always worked out with Brandon Prust, and Brandon was kind of the exact same player I was. It was just a shame he was always ahead of me in the depth chart. So I was drafted to Calgary. Prusty was in Calgary, and then he got traded to New York, and then I had signed with New York. So I always kind of had him in front of me, and he always did such a good job at his role that I had no chance of taking his job unless he got injured, and I would never wish that upon anyone.
No. We're gonna get to that later too about the being in the Rangers system, because I have a ton of questions about that, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, first we'll start off with your juniors career. I mean, you had 117 points in 60 games in the U18. You played under Mike Foligno, and you played with Nick Foligno. What was that experience like for you?
Mike, to this day, is still someone I keep in touch with. He's definitely a mentor in my career. I learned a lot from Mike. On the ice, I learned how to be a better player, but away from the ice, I learned how to be a better person. He helped me a lot. I think it helped a lot that he had so much experience at the NHL level. He's a guy that's played over 1,000 games in the NHL. He was a hard-nosed guy, but he could still play the game. So for me as a young kid going into Sudbury, I don't think I could have got a better coaching experience from him. I learned so much from him, and I'm grateful to this day that I had him as a coach. And having Nick on the team with Mike as a coach, sometimes
a little bit of favoritism.
Yeah, no, obviously there wasn't any favoritism. It was the complete opposite. He was harder on Nick than almost anyone. So yeah, he was great. He was professional all the time, and I think Nick would, if you asked him, would say that his dad was more than fair when coaching him, and I think a great coach for him as well too. I know that they used to ride home after games, and if Nick ever played bad, it wouldn't be that overly enjoyable. He'd tell us about the next day at the rink. But I think that comes and goes.
No, yeah, if it's the opposite, Mike Foligno's not someone you want to mess with. So
no.
I could see that. Totally. I could totally see that. And you also played with guys like Stamkos too, Mark Stahl. What was it like, especially Stamkos? I mean, future Hall of Famer right there, no doubt.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. So my third year in Sudbury, I got called into the office at the trade deadline, and Mike told me that he had traded me as a part of a future consideration deal to Sarnia. He said we needed to bring a goalie in, and we brought the goalie in, and the only way for it to get done was for me to go the other way the following season. So I went to Sarnia in the summer and met with the GM and head coach, and they told me I'd be riding shotgun with Stammer. So
that's so sick.
Dude,
that is so sick.
I mean, all I had to do was give him the puck and just watch him do his thing. And, like on the power play, you just say, take the goalie's eyes away, don't move, and I'll shoot around you. And I'd have pucks like here. Never hit me. And he, like, to his credit, obviously there's some God-given skill with how good he is, but he worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. Every day before practice, he'd be out there taking 100, 200 one-timers from our coach, and it just didn't stop. It was every day. So I'm happy to see he's had the career he has, and he's done really well for himself.
Yeah, 100%. Like, easily a future Hall of Famer, and his work ethic. I mean, you could see it now. You don't win 2 cups by accident.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to be a leader on that team as well, I think it says a lot about him as a person. And then in Sudbury as well, we had Benoit Pouliot. You guys probably
I was going to ask about Pouliot,
yeah,
dude. He had 140 PIMs.
Yeah, he was crazy. Crazy Frenchman. He was so crazy sometimes. But no, he was a really good player, and he was another guy that they had drafted him really late. The year before I was drafted, and we both had the same rookie season, and he kind of came out of nowhere. He's a big, lanky guy, and he could skate, and I think he ended up going 4th or 5th overall the NHL that year. And
4th overall to Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota, and then Mark Stahl would have went top 15 to New York, I think, too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Straight
so
up to
we
get
had
him.
both of them, and then Adam McQuaid, who was also in New
Yep.
York for a
You're gonna
little
ask
bit.
about him.
Yeah, no, he was a really good stay-at-home defenseman too. He was a great guy. So
You had a good scrap with McQuaid,
along
I
with
saw.
Nick, and then we had a couple other guys that got NHL contracts too. So we definitely didn't lack the talent or lack of player in junior, and I think that's a credit to Mike for developing a lot of these kids into the players they became as men.
Yeah. Dude, that's man, I love that. What was Quater like? I'm very curious about him because every time I hear about him, I hear that he's like a super cool guy off the ice. Like, was he like super vocal, like outgoing guy?
No, like the exact opposite.
Really?
So quiet.
Oh my
I'll
gosh.
tell you a story. We were playing
Yes.
Peterborough in playoffs, and Steve Downey. Do you guys remember Steve Downey?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he was in Peterborough at the time, and he was in front of the net just whacking Quater, and Quater wouldn't do anything, like nothing at all. After the game, Mike came in and grabbed a big. They used to have these big Gatorade tubs in the middle of the room. Grabbed it and threw it, and you got to stand up for yourself. You're a big boy. You're a strong boy. Like you can't let people do this to you. And then the next time we played Peterborough, I don't know, say it was 2 or 3 weeks later, Quater grabbed Downey and just beat the living piss out of him. And then, I think Adam realized that he's a big, strong guy and he can, hold his own. And then I think as a player, he started to develop even more because guys started to become a little more scared of him. He had a little extra time with the puck. He can make, more plays. And that's another guy that he put a little bit of time in the American League and then ended up being a steady NHL defenseman for many, many years.
Yeah, dude, he was good. I remember when the Rangers, they had just acquired him when they started their rebuild after the letter. And I was actually kind of upset they didn't keep him around. I thought he was a perfect fit for a young team that needed one, a solid, steady, stay-at-home defenseman that could get the puck out of his own without a problem. He was tough as nails too, dude.
Yeah, he was. He was like you said, he was a guy that could play. He skated well. He always had good gaps, and he was tough as nails. And I don't know why GMs do some things they do.
That's the same thing.
No, I'm sure as fans, there's a lot of question marks as to why GMs or coaches do the things they do, but there's always seems to be a method behind the madness.
Right.
100%. But like that juniors team must have been in general just tough as nails with all the guys that you had. Like
even
that's definitely a Mike Foligno team. That's definitely a Mike Foligno team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude. No, we were definitely a hard-nosed team. I remember my first year, so I would have been 16 years old, and prior to coming to the OHL, I didn't really fight that much. I was always kind of a more skilled player. With kids my age, as it's to be expected growing up, and then when you go into a elite level, there's a bigger pool, and your skill kind of gets lost in it a little bit, or guys are more skilled. And I remember I was playing on the fourth line at the time with a guy named Alex Eaton and Kyle or Cody Musselman, I can't remember.
What a name!
And we Mike used to start all three of us, and they were the one day I walked in and they're playing rock, paper, scissors in the room. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? They were playing rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to fight who off the opening draw. This went on for 3 games. I can't remember who fought who, but we did this thing. And finally, the fourth game, I was like, okay, boys, like just let me in on the act. So we're all in rock, paper, scissors, see who gets to fight who. And then this happened for like 12 or 13 games. And then the OHL called Mike and said, like, you got to stop doing this. We're fighting like, 1, 2, 3 seconds into the game. It was just,
oh my God.
I mean, this is also 20 years ago and the game's evolved a lot from that, but we were.
Yeah, I was going to say and like ask you, like, what do you think about them like trying to like take hitting and fighting back in juniors as well?
Yeah, for me, it's no good. And I could honestly care less if there's fighting or hitting, but when you have players that know they can do whatever they want, they're going to do whatever they want.
Right.
And you can say, yeah, there's so many injuries from fighting or because of someone being punched in the face or whatever associated with fighting. But I'd be curious to know how many injuries there are because there's no fighting. You know, how many more
Yeah.
head checks there are, how many more
Mhm.
hits from behind there are.
Yep.
And I think that, you know, guys that fight, whether they're a heavyweight, whether it's just your middleweight or you know, whether it's a straight up goon, um,
Mhm.
they're almost policing the game in a
Yeah.
sense. You know, they're kind of working with the league and in policing the game. Um, and I think over the years from when I started, you know, 16, 17 years ago to where it is now, obviously it's a lot more skilled. Players skate better, they're
Mhm.
better with the puck. But there's a lot more dirty stuff that goes on and
Yeah.
goes unpunished because you don't have guys um, that protect the players in the way they used to. I mean, if you look at Sidney Crosby, he always had someone, you know, one of
Mhm.
the toughest guys in the league on his team every year, and there
Yep.
was a reason for that. And now you have McDavid, and he's got no one, and it's fine because there isn't really anyone left in the league with, you know, killer instincts, I guess you'd say.
Right. It only takes one bad egg with bad intentions, though, to change that. You make a really good point, too, especially if you know there's really no consequences besides a multimillionaire getting a $5,000 fine. I mean,
Right.
guys are going to take liberties if they get pissed off. And it's just what's going to happen.
Yeah, and for me as a player that always played rough, I never tried to play dirty. I never tried to hit guys from behind. I never tried to, you know, run guys over and deliberately elbow in the head. But if I looked over in warmups and knew that there was no one that could fight me on the other team,
Mm-hmm.
I would do whatever I wanted to the
Oh,
most
yeah.
skilled player on the other team
Mm-hmm.
because I knew there was no repercussion to it. I know I could go up and, you know, run my glove over the guy's face, twist his nose, or pop back, you know, like
Yep. Yep.
a bunch of little stuff that doesn't really sound like a big deal, but when you're a skilled guy, it
Mm-hmm.
just kind of throws you off.
Right.
And you know, if on the other side of that, if I looked over and there was, you know, two or three heavyweights on the other side, I'd probably think twice about doing that to a skilled guy.
Yep.
Um, or if I did do it to a skilled guy, I know I'd have to have my gloves off within, you know,
Right.
three
Answer the
three
bell.
seconds because someone was coming. So
Dude, it's funny you bring up Crosby too. Like when he first came up, I remember, at least as a Rangers fan playing against the Penguins, my biggest fear was never Crosby, it was never Malkin. It was watching Eric Gardner potentially knocking one of my favorite players' teeth out, and that was
yeah,
my biggest fear growing up.
yeah, he was as tough as they came. That Goddard.
Dude, that guy
But
was a monster. I
I
actually have a.
remember some good ones with him and Colton Orr. There
That's
was
who
some,
I was gonna bring up. It was
yeah,
Colton Orr. He was one of
yeah,
my favorite Rangers growing up. He was my first ever Rangers jersey, Colton Orr.
yeah. No, it's the game's evolved along a lot. Sorry, from how it used to be. But no,
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer in. I don't really think that there's a place in the game for a guy that can't skate or a guy that
Hmm.
can't handle a puck. I do agree that needs to be taken out of the game, but at the same time, I think, you know, if you have one or two guys that can handle their own, whether they're a heavyweight, a middleweight,
Yep.
lightweight, whatever it is, someone that can stick up for you, I think it goes a long way with your team morale. I mean,
Yeah.
just knowing you have that on your bench. I mean, you
Hmm.
look at the Leafs right now with Reeves, you know, maybe he's not the best player in the world, but I'm sure Matthews and
Yep.
Nylander and Marner, I'm sure all these guys feel relatively safe on the ice, and all of them are having career years, you know. So I don't know if there's
Yep.
any correlation between the two, but I think there is a little mental edge when you do have someone that can stick up for you.
We
Yeah, that
see it
stuff is
right now.
contagious. Yeah, right now the Rangers called up Matt Rempe, who's brought a
Hmm.
physical presence, and it's become
Yeah.
contagious. Like
The
even
team's
guys like
different.
yeah, even guys like Panarin are throwing the body every now and then. So it's definitely a contagious thing.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with it, and I've followed that kid. I've seen a couple of his fights from Hartford, and then of
Hmm.
course, you know, the last week he made a storm in the NHL.
Dude.
I had a couple guys on my team here send me clips of this guy. Like it's unbelievable, you know, like he's fighting and then his face the next day with his
Yep.
nose all swollen up and the,
Yep.
the black eyes. No, but for sure, it makes guys play bigger when you
Oh
have
yeah.
and usually those guys are character guys. You know,
Hmm.
they're the least selfish guys on your team, guys that are, you know, team first, and they do have less skill and they're happy to be there and happy to be in the role
Hmm.
they're in. And I'm sure this Rempe kid's on top of the world right now. And
Yeah.
if I was in his shoes, 15 years ago, I would have done the same thing.
Right.
Had I got called up to the NHL, I would have tried to run guys over and fight everybody.
I love it.
If for him, he's doing what he needs to do, and if he can evolve his game as a player, he's going to make a lot of money in the future because there's not too many guys like him anymore.
Oh yeah.
I have a question regarding Matt Rempe because we seen him. He came up, he got into a fight with Matt Marr in his first game, laid out Nate Basham with a big hit, got into a fight with Nick Delorier on the Flyers, Olivia on the Blue Jackets. And there's been this big discussion where it's as a young player, if you get challenged to a fight, should you keep accepting every challenge, or it gets to a point where it's okay, I've accepted enough. Can I start now declining? How do veterans look at a younger guy like that? Do you lose a lot of respect if you don't accept the fight like that?
No, and for me as an older guy now that's been in numerous fights, if it was a young kid like that, probably I wouldn't go out of my way to ask him to fight just because I've been doing it for so long at this point. But if he asked me to fight, I would most definitely have all the respect in the world, and I'd almost 100% give him the 5-minute major just out of respect for him, because at one point I was 20 years old and I was going up to 35, 36-year-olds asking them to fight me. And they were, kind enough at the time. I don't know if kind enough's the right word, but at the time, they gave me a fight. So I think as a young guy, if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to end up fighting less in the long run, if that makes any sense. Because guys are going to start to see, especially if he starts to win a couple more fights. I've watched a couple of his fights, and I still think he's got a lot to learn.
Yes.
He, for a big guy, he doesn't really string guys out and use his reach. But I think once he kind of gets a feel for it and does it more and starts to understand, what to do and how not to get hit and how to, essentially hurt guys, he's going to be an absolute killer. And guys probably aren't going to want to deal with him that much. So
no, that reach.
Yeah, if I were him, I would be doing the exact same thing he was doing. I'd try to make big checks, try to get in on the forecheck. And anytime someone asked me to fight, I'd fight them. And if there was a heavyweight or whoever on the other team, I'd be asking them to fight. And I think he's gaining nothing but respect from it.
Yeah, I agree. That was a good question, Matt. I actually want to rewind a little bit. So you get drafted by Calgary. They don't end up signing you, but I saw you play with the Blue Jackets. Was that the Traverse City Prospect Tournament?
Yes, it was.
Dude,
so
I want to hear about this. I want to hear all about that.
Yeah, so I'd been drafted by Calgary. I think it was in 2006.
Yep.
And they had up until 2008 to sign me. So after my 4th year in the OHL, they offered me a contract, but it was just standard contract. I didn't have a signing bonus, and it was the bare minimum on everything. Yeah. So I had just come off a really good year in the OHL. I was a point-a-game player, league heavyweight. I think I'd scored, I don't know the exact amount of goals, but say somewhere between 20 and 25 goals. And my agent had advised me to go back in the draft instead of signing with Calgary. So I went back in the draft in hopes that no one would draft me so that I would be a real free agent. No one drafted me. And then I went to Columbus's development camp in the summer, and then again to their rookie camp and main camp. And we played at that Traverse City tournament. I got really lucky there. I played on a line with Jake maybe not in, I can't remember if I played with Voracek and Filatov in the Traverse City or if it was with Columbus. But nonetheless, I played out of my mind that week. I had I think we played Detroit at first. I scored a goal, and then the next game we played St. Louis or Dallas. I don't know who it was. I think I had a goal and assist and a fight. And then,
dude, you dropped Luke Gazdic. That was the sickest fight I've ever seen in my life.
And then we played Dallas the next game, and I fought Gazdic 3 or 4 times in junior. and so we're gonna put a show on. And he said, "Sure thing." I knocked him out. So I had a really good camp there, and then I stuck around really late actually in Columbus. I was one of their last cuts. And because I was on a PTO, whoever the person was that handles the media releases there wrote on the team website that I had been released from the Columbus Blue Jackets. So at the time, Newport Sports, Mark Guy was my agent, and he'd called me maybe 2 hours later and said, Cameron Hope and of New York Rangers wants to sign you to a 3-year entry-level deal. So, of course, I did that.
Dude, man, that's kind of crazy. What a mistake by Columbus, because I thought you killed it with the Wolfpack. It's funny because, like, when you had first joined the Wolfpack, I believe it was 2009, 2010. Let me just make sure I'm right. Yeah, 2009. 08, 09. So 2009, 2010 was when I was first becoming super educated and like with hockey and watching it more. And I was getting into the Wolfpack, having played all the NHL games. You could do the GM mode stuff, and I was always like, man, who's this Devin guy with 99 fighting? And and that's what really it's really funny. But you're kind of the reason I started paying more and more attention to the Hartford Wolfpack. So your first season with Hartford, your first professional team, and I don't know if you know this, but you hold the single season record for 33 majors in one season with the Wolfpack. No one's broken that record. I'm sure Red Bear would have tried, but
yeah, I didn't know that, to be honest. And I know there was a lot of guys that fought while I was there. But yeah, I kind of touched on it earlier when we talked. You know, I went to camp with New York, and there was guys like Chris Drury, who else would have been there? Callahan, Gabrick. And I knew right off the bat that I was never going to be a guy that was going to play in the top 6. I was never going to be a guy that was on the power play. So in my mind, I knew that I had not enough skill, but I had enough skills to play the game and be a guy that could make the NHL as a checking forward. I could always skate fine prior to my hip surgeries. And, you know, I didn't mind doing the rough stuff and all that. So when I went down to Hartford, I had one goal in mind, and that was to fight my way into the NHL. So that whole entry-level contract, I fought a crazy amount. I've never fought more in my career. But, you know, it's not because I loved doing it, or, you know, because I was crazy in the head. It's because, you know, you have this dream of a bigger goal in your mind, and that's how I thought I was going to do it. So had I stuck around in North America for longer, you know, than 4 or 5 years, I think maybe I could have got a sniff. But at the same time, you know, mentally and physically, it takes a pretty big toll on you. And I was just done fighting 30 times a year.
Yeah, it was crazy. I can't believe that you never even got a call with the Rangers. I mean, looking at those teams, coached by John Tortorella, who definitely respected players that play the way you play. They go out, they trade for guys like Jody Shelley, like you said. They had the Brandon Pruss of the world, Aaron Voros. I'm just looking at guys up and down. Dane Byers, who had a couple call-ups.
Brashear was there while I was under contract. Derek Bugard was there while I was under contract.
Boogeyman.
Yeah, I mean, New York's arguably the best place to play in the NHL. And when you think of the NHL, a lot of people think of the New York Rangers or any team in the original 6. So as far as recruiting in the summer, or as far as getting established players in the league, it's one of the easiest places for players to go. So I think being in New York, it is hard to break in, especially if you're not a young, super talented player, and they can go out in the market and, you know, sign guys like Bugard and these other guys for $1 million. And you know, if I work out in the minors where, you know, instead of 6 goals, I score 16 goals, well, then they don't have much to lose with the guys they've signed. But in the role I was in Hartford, it was really hard, you know, to be an offensive threat, being on the third line. And we always had good teams in Hartford too. We always had, you know, a bunch of guys that were definitely more than capable of playing in the NHL, just, you know, never got the chance. And I think that's the way it goes when you're at the AHL level. I mean, you're one call up away from, one injury away from being called up, or you can just, you know, be there. It's you're so close, but you're so far in the same sense.
Right. It's interesting.
Well, that's something that I do kind of want to ask too, like the mental side of things with being in the AHL. Like, do you visibly notice with like guys that get sent up and down, like there's an adjustment, like a difficult adjustment, I should say, mentally in terms of being called up and down?
I would say in terms of being sent down from the NHL, yeah, guys are, noticeably upset. How could you not be? It'd be like being at the pinnacle of your job, and then one day the boss comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to have you go clean toilets for the next, year." And so obviously there's, a mental side to that where it's definitely hard on players. Even a guy like Wade Redden, who I would have played with my second or third year. I mean, he's a great defenseman and just got stuck in a situation where he was making too much money and it hurt against the cap and he got buried in the minors. So a guy like him, he had his good days, he had his bad days, but he was always super professional, whether, he was happy or not. And then the other way, guys that I played with that had got called up, obviously there's a massive excitement as a kid playing this sport. The ultimate goal is to play in the NHL. So when you finally get that call, whether you've been in the American League for 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, it's the same excitement. So I think this Rempe kid right now, he's on,
right,
emotional roller coaster. He's just kind of riding that wave. So it's nice to see stories like this where a kid, is in the American League, does his thing and gets credited for it and goes to the NHL, and now he's turning into a household name because of all the publicity he's getting. So maybe he's starting to make hockey violent again. Maybe I can play for 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
We gotta get Jordy to pick up the phone.
No, yeah, I mostly ask because of like a kid like him who, because the deadline's approaching and he might get sent back down because of, ads at the deadline, and like especially for younger players, like is there like deep conversations with the coaches too, like with that sort of thing?
On a personal note, for me, I never had any conversations with Kenny Jernander in Hartford about, going up or down. I just always kind of stuck to my own business and did my own thing. But with that Rempe kid, I don't know how there's any way they could send him down right now.
I agree.
On a team that, should make a deep playoff push. I think he's going to be one of the guys that in a playoff round that he's going to be an unsung hero.
I agree.
That they got on the fourth line. There's another
Adam
Yeah.
Edstrom.
Like get those two guys in on the forecheck and they can just wear down D. And in one game in the season it doesn't do too much damage. But if you play a team for 7 games and every time a defenseman goes back and gets a puck, he's getting hit by one of those two. By game 7, they're going to be like, "Fuck this," Like, so I don't know if there's any way that Drury can send down this Rempe kid. I think he's done everything they've asked him to do. He's chipped in with a goal. I know at least one goal, maybe more than that. And when he is on the ice, from anything I've seen, he doesn't look to be a liability or look to be hurting the team at all.
That's so they never even once approached you that said, "Hey, you might be getting a shot," ever with getting called up?
No, never. And as far as I know, like even a guy like Dale Weiss, who I would have been in Hartford with for 3 years, he was up and down quite a bit. And there was never any conversations like, "Hey, you might be going up tomorrow." It was always, say they're called down or Shoney called down and said, "Hey, get Weiser in a car and send him up to New York." It was always kind of a spur of the moment thing.
See, that blows my mind. And this is nothing against like the Brashears and the Voroses of the world, but I think this is a mistake, and Matt and Evan could touch on this too, that the Rangers always made, is they tend to neglect younger players that possibly have very bright futures in their role in the NHL for older veterans that may be on the back 9 and closer to 18 than 9 at that. And it's just frustrating, man, because I think it would have been sick to see you play under John Tortorella. I think you would have killed it, man.
I would have loved to play under John Tortorella.
Dude.
No, but I agree with that. And it's kind of like what I said before, being an original 16 and being such a popular franchise, you can kind of attract names for less money because it is the New York Rangers. So excuse me, guys. If you have a guy that has 600-700 NHL games, and you can sign him for less than he's worth, it's hard to say no when you have some kid in Hartford and you don't know how he's going to be at the NHL level. So yeah, I think for sure that I got lost in the shuffle a little bit. I think had I signed with Columbus, I probably, would have had a better chance of making it to the NHL. But at the same time, when the New York Rangers come knocking, it's a hard thing to say no to. It's like New York, Toronto, Chicago, Detroit, Boston, all these teams. As a player, they're the big teams in your head.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the Wolfpack because I mean, obviously, over the past decade, the Wolfpack exactly haven't been the most successful AHL franchise around. The Rangers in general never really, develop young talent out of Hartford, even though now they're starting to do that with some of these boxers, guys like Cooley, Edstrom, Rempe. And I know we've heard a lot of like negative things about the Wolfpack, about them, treating some of their players down there badly. Example, Sean Day, he terminated his entry level contract. I just your thoughts, like maybe you or some of your teammates, how did you feel like they were treating you guys down there? Did you think it was fairly, or did you think like it was a bit harsh, like we've seen with some of these kids like Sean Day?
I think, however many years, say 16, 17 years ago when I started, especially as a young guy, you didn't complain about much. It was kind of just go in, do your thing, and that's it. Now it's evolved a lot from where players have more of a voice. So I can't speak about how it is now, but how it was 15 years ago, I think we got treated more than fair in terms of development of young players. I think they could have done a much better job developing a lot of young players for sure. Sorry, boys.
You're good.
We had a lot of guys that were good young players and never got a chance in New York, but got a chance in other players or in other cities. So
yeah.
So I got to grab a drink of water here.
No, you're good. See, that's kind of like what we've been saying too. It's like there's actually some players I wanted to ask you about specifically that you played with in Hartford. I mean, the obvious ones are Artem Anisimov goes on to have a pretty good career, but a guy like P.A. Parento, who I don't think people realize was super feisty on top of being a very skilled player. What was it like playing with like P.A. Parento?
Yeah, like in my opinion, P.A. Parento had no business being in the American Hockey League.
Yeah, he was insane.
He could single-handedly dominate a game at the American League level. And I think if a player is good enough to dominate at the American level, they should be at the NHL level. Could P.A. Parento be a first-line player on a good team? I'm not sure. But could he have been a first or second-line player on a middle-of-the-pack bottom-end team? 100%. So there when I played, there was one or two guys like that on every American League team. So it's hard too, and as a club that's trying to develop players, we had guys like P.A. Parento, Corey Locke, Mark Bell, Patrick Miller. We had a lot of players, like a lot of players that would have been considered older, that were really good players. But those players are also say out of those four guys, you got 6 spots in the top 6. Well, 4 of them are gone because there's guys that have already played at the NHL or should be in the NHL. So it's really hard to develop players when they're on a third or fourth line. You don't get the proper minutes and at the time, I don't think Kenny Gernander did a very good job at developing, the younger guys, even in practice with, extra work or anything like that. So, but at the same time, it's a business, and I'm sure, they don't want the younger guys being in a losing environment where you're, a bottom team because it's all young kids. So I think there's a lot of give and take with that too, for sure.
Do you think with Corey Locke, because I mean, the kid had insane junior numbers. He had 150 points. He lit it up for the Wolfpack. I want to say he had 85 points point a game. Do you think with him, it was more his size and that era they were treating people differently because of size back then that could have held him back? Because I mean, the skill was undeniable. The talent was there. What do you think could have been holding him back?
Yeah, I think for sure. That's definitely just a time thing. He was a small guy. He wasn't overly physical, and at that time, to be small and not physical, it was non-existent in the NHL.
Yeah.
Guys were too big. That's the time when every NHL defenseman was at least 6'2", 220 pounds. He would have got eaten alive. So I think he definitely fell into a case where he was a good player, but unfortunately lacked the size or I don't want to say compete, but the physical demands of the game at the time. So,
did you who was like some of your line mates in Hartford that you'd see yourself next to consistently?
Well, when Brash got sent down, I played with Brashear. I think
that's a scary fourth line in the mind. Oh my God!
Second year, and then my first year we had a veteran guy by the name of Brandon Sugden. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that name at all?
Sugden played for the Wolfpack?
Yeah, my first year.
Oh my God, I missed that one.
Yeah. 1 second, boys. I got to open a window here. I'm all
you're good.
Stuffed up.
I did not realize Sugden played for the Wolfpack. There's no way.
Yeah, no, Brandon Sugden, my first year. So I played on a line with him and
oh my God.
centerman that went to I think he was at Vermont, maybe Mike Ouellette. But those two, that was my line, my first year.
Christ.
So I learned
no one was taking liberties.
No, not with Sugar. Like Sugar was a killer. I learned a lot from him. He helped me a lot with the actual fighting side of the game, with little tricks and stuff to do. And he was a guy that's probably the toughest guy I ever played with. But
Dude,
if you told him, "Hey, skate from one end to the other," straight line, I'm not sure if he could have done it. So,
dude, that guy was a refrigerator on skates, bro. I can't believe I missed it. He played for the Wolfpack, dude. He was a monster.
My first year pro, he was there. He was an absolute killer. So it was nice too that he played on a line with me, because as a 20-year-old, I probably wasn't physically strong enough to fight the big boys, and he would kind of take all the big, mean, super heavyweights, and I kind of got left with all the scraps, which was really, really nice for me.
That's crazy. You played with Sean Avery too for a little bit. What was Aves like in the AHL?
Yeah, that would have been my second year, I think. Yeah, no, he was super nice to me.
Yeah.
He could be a massive dickhead to a lot of other guys. But for whatever reason, he really liked me. So, I used to go out in New York with him on off days, and he was always super kind to me. So I got nothing but good things to say about Sean. And then I know it must have been my third year on entry-level contract. Yeah, would have been my third year. I went to New York a little bit earlier to train, and I went up to the Hamptons, to his place in the Hamptons, and we trained there for a little bit and hung out there. So
dude, that's sick.
He's a guy that I always respected, and I really liked him. And he was another guy that, he had a pretty bad rep for, being a dirty player, but he could really play the game. He was an unbelievable skater. He could score. He could play on the power play. He knew how to piss everyone off.
Dude, I miss Aves.
I really want to know what the dynamic in the locker room was like between him and Tortorella. Like, I would do anything to hear about that, because the amount that we hear Sean Avery rant about Tortorella, I am so curious to hear about that sort of stuff.
They having a good training camp battles?
Yeah.
No, like bad, nothing bad I ever saw in training camp with Torts and Abe. But those training camps were hell. I mean, for the first 2 days with Torts, we didn't see a puck. It was and working out. He was just trying to mentally break guys down. So, he was a hard-nosed coach, and he's had a lot of success. So, I mean, obviously it works.
Oh, yeah. I do want to ask about a Hartford teammate, because I want to know about Michael Sauer. And I do want to ask, are you still in touch with him in any way? Because the age-old question with Ranger fans is, what is Michael Sauer up to these days, if you're talking to him at all?
That would be a great question. I haven't talked to Mike probably in 12 years. The last I heard, he had a really bad concussion with the Rangers.
The Dion Phaneuf hit.
Yeah, he never
played again. Never.
No, Mike was really good defenseman. He had a pretty strong bloodline, if I recall. His brother played in
Kurt.
Yeah, in Arizona, right?
Yep.
And then he had another brother that I believe played in the NFL.
Really?
I didn't even know
I
that.
think no, dude. I think he's right. I feel like I heard this
If
before.
if you guys are on the computer, you might have to fact check me, but I'm almost 100% sure he had a brother that played in the NFL. So they were. Mike was
Craig Sauer. You're not kidding.
I was gonna say I believe it.
Like,
dude, I mean, that guy was a wolf. Oh my god, he was a beast.
He was like Michael was a huge kid. He was a year older than I was, and he was like 6'4", 220 pounds, and looked like a Greek god, you know. Like but another guy that wasn't overly mean. He was super nice. He was a really good guy. It's super Christian or Catholic. I don't know what what religion it was. I can't remember, but he was. He was a good guy, yeah.
What about Stu Bickle? What was it like? I could not imagine playing hockey, looking to the other side, seeing you, Newberry, Stu Bickle. Like, what was Stu Bickle like?
So the year we got Bickle, he was in Syracuse, and I had fought him maybe a week or two before, and then he got traded to us. So it was super awkward for me. I mean, I had just fought him a week or two ago, and then a week or two later, I'm shaking his hand and saying, "Hey, welcome to the team." So that was definitely. I think that's the only time in my whole career that I had fought someone in a season and ended up playing with them. So that was definitely a different situation for me. But again, that was another guy, big, steady demon that made it to the NHL and stayed there because he could fight.
You guys had to have some chip on your shoulder with the team you guys had in Hartford, man. You guys were tough.
Yeah, we were crazy tough, and it's a lot different now. But I've gone on some other podcasts before, and they talk about Ryan Reeves or all this and that, and like I always say, Ryan Reeves was a guy in the American League you used to fight because you didn't want to fight someone tough. It was a different animal before, so it's changed a lot over time.
I think people lose sight of that often. How tough the AHL really was back then, dude. It
was a jungle. It was absolutely crazy. Like I can remember when we played Bridgeport. I don't know if you guys would remember it. Trevor Gillies, do you remember?
Yes, Trevor Gillies. Yes, the handlebar.
Gillies was there. Jeremy Yablonski. Do you remember this name at all?
Did you fight Yablonski?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Michael Henry was there, who played for the Rangers.
Yep.
And Brett Gallant. So that was like their fourth line. And all these guys would be, if they played in the NHL now, they'd be, top 3 in the league. Haley was tough at the end of his career, and he was like a good middleweight at the time.
Yeah.
In the American League. So, it was definitely a lot different. We used to call it the jungle. So
the jungle. Oh my.
The jungle.
Dude, how did guys like I think it was your third year. I was double checking. Yeah, your third year. You had guys like Michael Delzato get sent down, and Ryan McDonough just started his professional career. What was it like? Because the story with Delzato, and I'm a huge Delzato fan, so I'm not at all taking shots at him. But the story always was that he lacked maturity when he got sent down as a player. If you had any interaction with him or just watching him, did you see a lot of raw talent there that might have been lost by maybe a little bit of immaturity?
There's no question there was a ton of talent, but at the same time, DZ was only like a year or two younger than I was. So in terms of recognizing immaturity, it would be hard for me to say because I was, right in the same age bracket. And the way I acted when I was, 20, 21, 22 is a lot different than the way I act when I'm 35 now. So, did he like to go out and have a fun time? Yeah, for sure he did. But as a 20 or 21-year-old making money, you're not going to go out and enjoy yourself, So how, like he never spoke back to coaches. He was always respectful. So in terms of him as a person, as a human, he was always a nice guy. I never had a problem with DZ, and I don't think many guys on the team did.
That's crazy that guys. I hate that players like that get such a bad rap, and I think it was Biz that brings it up all the time. Is guys just go out and have fun, and then the media just turns around and just dumps on these guys like they're bad people because they go out and like to have a good time.
yeah, that was the nice thing about when I was young. It was kind of before the smartphone era with
Mm-hmm.
Twitter. I think Twitter had just started maybe when I was like 23 or 24. I'm sure it
Mm-hmm.
started before, but just started to get popular. Like Instagram wasn't a thing yet, so
Mm-hmm.
you could go out and you could completely fly under the radar.
Right.
But now when guys go out, I mean, if they do one stupid thing,
Yep.
it's game over because it's everywhere. So
Whole world sees it. Your life's
yeah,
over.
exactly. It's good in a sense that I think a lot of these players can build their brand in a more
Mm-hmm.
positive manner, but at the same time, if you slip up one time, it can be over.
Yeah. Cancel just as quick as you came up.
Yeah, like that kid from Arizona that just posted a video of him.
Rosika, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ripping rails and like
Yeah. Just sipping on a nose beer and his
yeah,
whole life's
first
over.
of all, like, why are you putting this on your social media? But
Yep.
15 years ago, guys were doing this. I'm sure it just
Mm-hmm.
there was no outlet for you to put it on where you could have
Mm-hmm.
got it. I mean, unless you put it on Facebook, I don't know, but
Right.
it's changed a lot.
Yeah, it really has. Matt, did you wanna start asking about Europe?
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, after during the lockout in 0405, you go to Cardiff and you start playing hockey in Europe. I just want to say, like, did you have any offers from any other European clubs, or was it just Cardiff only?
So that was the year of the NHL lockout,
Mm-hmm.
and Mike Foligno was coaching in Chicago, like for the Chicago Wolves at the time. So the original plan was for me to play for the Wolves that year. Mike was gonna, bring me there, and uh, we got word that the lockout was gonna go. So it was kind of last minute, and they said, "Well, why do you go play in Europe for a little bit and enjoy yourself?" So I went to Cardiff, and Biz ended up playing on the
Yep.
team with me there. So Paul and myself lived together in an apartment, and then I don't know, maybe in December I would have went back, and I went to East Coast League for a couple games just to kind of get in shape, and then as soon as the lockout ended, I stayed the rest of the year in Chicago. So that's kind of how that started, but. When I signed that deal with Cardiff, I knew it wasn't going to be a long-term thing. At that point, I hadn't seriously considered staying in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and then the following year, after my year in Chicago, I got a offer in the Swedish Elite League, or SHL now it's called, with
Mm-hmm.
Fredrikstad, and that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna give this European thing a serious go.
Not a bad look, dude. Not a
Yeah,
bad look at all.
and
It's
obviously,
beautiful over there.
I know it was a short time you stayed over there in Cardiff and played for them, but how's the city over there? How's the
Mm-hmm.
culture? How
Yeah.
different was it, to over here?
Oh, completely different. In terms of going from the American League to the British EIHL,
Mm-hmm.
it was like dog years in comparison to rinks and the way you're treated, equipment, and all
Right.
this and all that. But in terms of how you were treated by the club and what they had, I they did their best to keep me happy, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone there was so polite. So I really did enjoy my time in Cardiff. The city was unbelievable. British hockey fans are actually they're quite passionate.
Yeah,
Their rinks
dude.
Yeah.
obviously aren't as big as North America. Maybe the biggest rink would be, I don't know, 9 or 10,000 people, but they fill them, and they
Mm-hmm.
fill them consistently.
Yeah.
It's never a spot that I thought of as a Canadian. Wow, they would be passionate about hockey. They're absolutely crazy for it. So
Yeah.
being able to go to different countries, I've been played in so many different countries throughout my career, and seeing the passion, and even where I am right now, like Romania, if you would have told me, when I signed my entry level deal that at the end of my career I'd be playing in Romania, I would have said, no way. But
Yeah.
this is the way life goes. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
things happen that you would have never expected, and I'm grateful that it did, because you get to experience all these different cultures and all these
Mm-hmm.
different life experiences, and each experience in each country and each city, brought something new, whether it was food or wine,
Mm-hmm.
or just the general day-to-day stuff. So I'm quite happy I went to Europe, and every place I've been is different in its own little way, but it's all definitely so much different than North America.
Dude, well cultured, man. You've had some really cool stops. I don't know, Matt, if you wanted to ask about the Alps League, but
Yeah. So obviously, you go to the Alps League, you play in Italy. I mean, like,
dude,
how? Because I know, like over here in America, like our kind of sports atmosphere, in a way, it's kind of boring and generic. Because I know, like, we
Yeah.
have like our generic, like, let's go chants and stuff. But
right.
obviously over there in Europe, because I'm a big European football fan myself. I'm a big Manchester United fan, and obviously how it's like it is over there. You have most of the stadiums over there. You have one big home section, and then
Yep.
you have one specific area for the away fans. Just how much like crazy over there is the atmosphere. How much more like do the fans like really get into it into the game over there?
Oh yeah, if you had the atmosphere that the Europeans bring to games in the NHL, it would be mind-boggling for players. Like
Yeah.
God, man.
it's crazy in some of these. When I left Sweden, I actually went to Milan, and at the time,
God, it's so sick.
Milano. So they had it was called Curva di Milano, which is the curve of the rink, and
Right.
that's where all the I don't know what you want to call them, like super fans sat, and they wouldn't sit all game, cheer, like bang their drums. They had their own little
That's so
chants.
sick.
Like it was unbelievable. And as a North American that had never played in Europe before, to be able to go over and experience this, it was really cool for me. So yeah, definitely the fans over here are there's not as many because the stadiums and the rinks aren't as big, but in terms of the cheering and
Yep.
the actual like love for the game, I would say it's awesome. I wish that NHL fans could come over and experience. I know it's not for
Mhm.
everyone, but as a
Mhm.
player, when you have this noise and camaraderie, especially as a guy that was an energy player, it was always awesome for me.
I couldn't imagine, Matt. Man, like lining up with someone ready to scrap and having the drums beating or people scream. Oh my God, that
Even
gotta
the
be so
World
sick.
Juniors, just watching that with the way the crowd
Oh,
was.
dude.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So, yeah,
What was
the people in Milan were the most crazy. They were all AC Milan fans that had
yeah.
been kicked out of AC Milan games for whatever reason, and they didn't know much about hockey, but they just wanted a team to support.
Mhm.
So they would
Yep.
come to our games, and they would bring that same soccer hooligan
I
style
love
to
that.
the rink. So
Oh, I love
they
that.
would, like have you ever seen like the fireworks? I'm sure
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
a European soccer fan,
yeah.
football fan, whatever you want to call it. That they'd have those fireworks in the stands, the
Mhm.
smoke, everything. It was awesome.
God,
What was
that's so
like?
sick.
Because I mean, how long did you play in Italy for?
So I played in Milano for half of a year after the Swedish league. They were supposed to get a KHL team. That's why I originally went there.
In
Uh,
Milan?
yeah, it was the same. It was
Oh, that would have been so sick.
so the KHL started to expand into Europe. It's when they got Jokerit,
Mhm.
Riga. Who else was
Mhm.
there? There's a team in Belarus, Dynamo, and
Mhm.
some other teams. And Milano was supposed to join as well.
Oh
And
man.
so I had signed there in hopes that they were going to the KHL the next year because I had my Italian passport. Obviously, I would have been a non-import player, so it would have been, not easy, but relatively easy for me to be on the team. That never worked out, but
What a
yeah.
shame. That would have been
So it was
sick.
that year, and then I came back for 3 more years in Italy, and my second, third, and fourth year, it had switched from Italian Serie A, which was the first team that I played in Italy. A bunch of the teams had left, and they switched to this Alps League. So I was in northern Italy, and it was unbelievable. I mean, I would ski every day with my wife. We didn't have a child till our last year in Italy, so it was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, in terms of pure beauty, just to be able to open your door and
Mhm.
look out into the Alps and think like, okay, I get paid to play hockey and I get this.
Right.
It was obviously an awesome experience, and at the time I went to Italy, mentally, I think I was just a little worn down from everything that had happened in North America. So it was a nice, really reset for me. And, I kind of was able to put hockey on the back burner, not in terms of not caring about the game, but I was able to enjoy my life and be more happy. And with that, I was a better player because I was a better person and better on the ice, working harder, et cetera, et cetera.
You ripped up the Italian leagues, dude. I mean, you were about a point a game player.
Yeah, I did pretty good there. So no, yeah, and at the same time, I was 27, 28, 29. So probably in the peak years of my hockey career in terms of ages of when you should peak. So
right.
I did have a lot of success as a player in Italy, and I think too with my reputation, I got a little more time with the puck because a lot of guys were, scared of what I had previously done or what I could do to them. So definitely played an advantage for me. So
Right.
I know, as as a young kid, as a young hockey player, obviously your big dream is to play in the NHL, but obviously another big goal for a lot of guys is to represent their country on the international stage. And I know you said you were born in Canada, but you have Italian roots. What was it like playing for Team Italy on the
Yeah.
international stage?
That is so sick.
yeah, and when I went to Italy, obviously this became a reality, that I could represent the national team. So like you said, I am Canadian, and obviously I would have loved to represent Canada in some form, but that's not a realistic goal. So be able to be selected to represent Italy on the national stage was a pretty cool feeling for me to be able to put on a nation's jersey and represent them as one of the best players, at that time. Was something that was super cool and something that would have never happened had I only stayed in North America. So yeah, it's just one of those things that when you're young you never really picture, never really think about, but as time goes on and as you mature, I think you have different goals and things change, and you got to adapt to the change and just kind of roll with the punches, so to say.
Dude, those Italy jerseys were so sick too. I love Italy's national jerseys, man. They're so nice.
They're really, really nice for sure.
All right, what are you up to now? Now we got so now you switch over. You're off the Alps League and you move on to the Romanian League. So what influences that move? Was it you were looking to experience and see different things, or just how it happened to work out? They approached you.
So actually, when I played with Italy on a national break, we had a tournament in Budapest, Hungary. Have you guys ever been to Budapest?
I wish.
Never. So unbelievable city, and at the time, both my mother and father were visiting Italy, and they said, "Okay, we'll go." And my wife was there. Of course, she was pregnant, and I think we had 3 games in 5 days, say. So they kind of did all the sightseeing stuff while I was doing the hockey stuff. And after the trip, we had gone home, and my parents left, and my wife and I were out for dinner, and she said, "You know what, Devin, if you ever get a chance to play in Budapest, I think it would be unbelievable." So sure enough, the next season, I got a call from a team in Budapest asking me to go there. I said, "Yeah, like I would love it." And it was an unbelievable experience. Eastern Europe doesn't have the best reputation, I don't think, in the North American standard, but I've been all over the world now, and Budapest is one of my favorite cities in the whole world. Aside from probably Barcelona, Spain,
Right.
I'd say that Budapest is my second favorite city. So that was another awesome experience. But I played for a coach there, and then this coach ended up coaching the team that I'm on now. So I missed a year with COVID. My wife was pregnant, so we didn't want to go back to Europe. I was getting older, and I took the year off. And then that summer, I said to her, like, I still got the itch to play. I think I can still do it. And she looked at me and said, "Yeah, are you sure? You don't look like it."
I love it.
So I went back to Italy and played a couple months there just to kind of get my feet wet. And the coach I had in Budapest who is now in Romania. But it's so Erste League is a Hungarian and Romanian league. So
Okay.
we play. I think there's 4 teams in Budapest, another team in Debrecen, which would be like 2.5 hours away from Budapest. Miskolc's about the same distance, and then kind of a farm team for one of the bigger clubs in Hungary. So those are all the Hungarian teams, and then there's 3 Romanian teams. So they're all in this league. And long story short, he brought me to one of these Romanian teams, and I've been here ever since. And it's somewhere that I never expected that I would play, but it's been a really nice opportunity for me to experience something different. So I actually spoke to Mike Foligno on the phone. It was either yesterday or 2 days ago, and he just, I hadn't talked to him in a while. And he said that, obviously it didn't work out in terms of you reaching your goal of, being a everyday NHL player. But he said the experiences you have, the places you've played, like it's pretty crazy and pretty special when you think about it. And as I get older, I'm definitely more humbled by, everything I've done. And now when I go to the rink, it's nice to go to the rink and be happy to practice, be happy to play, because I know that it's going to come to an end soon, and it's going to be over. So it doesn't really matter where I am or what league or, how many goals I have, how many assists I have. It's more of a just kind of being grateful for everything I've had because of this game at this point.
That's so cool. I mean, and everything works out for a reason, right? You got your wife, you got your kids. You're playing and traveling to these beautiful areas. It's actually really, really cool. Now, speaking just on that, so I saw something somewhere. You self-represent. You're your own agent.
Yeah. So I had Newport Sports as a kid, and probably the first 5 or 6 years of my career. Don Meehan was the head of Newport Sports. I don't know if you guys know that name, but one of the bigger agents in North America. And then as time went on in Europe, I started to realize, like, I can do these contracts. So I've just kind of been representing myself, and it's definitely something I've thought about doing post hockey. I've actually been in contact with a couple European agents, and it might be something I do post career. Help represent, whether it's bring North American players to Europe or take European players and place them in Europe. So it's something that I'd have great interest in. I always tell my teammates I've played in every league except the only one that matters. So I got a pretty good handle on things.
God, that's so. Obviously, you've got what, 6-7 years left, maybe 8.
Yeah, I wish. My wife would kill you if she heard you say that. I think this is going to be my my last year. I got some pretty hard miles on the body, and I can't move the way I used to. So I think this is going to be it. Hopefully, we can go out. I can go out a champion.
Right, go back to back.
And to be able to go out back to back would be something that'd be truly amazing.
Well, dude, if this is the end of your playing career this season, congratulations on an amazing career. Logging all these professional hockey games. I know you mentioned, not the league that matters. Dude, you're living out the dream that many, many people in this world would love to live out, to play in these beautiful countries, to play in the AHL, to play in juniors, to get drafted, to do all these things. So even if this is the end, man, what a freaking run, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And like I, just said previously, it's obviously not the way I wrote it up, but to be able to experience all these places. And another cool thing about European hockey is, 3 times a year, there's breaks where the national teams play. So on these breaks, if you're not on the national team, you can go, on vacation and explore other places in Europe. So I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, my family and we went to the United Emirates, like a place, I'd never go had it not been for hockey. So there's so many, little opportunities or little situations in life that I'm even more grateful for now, just because of the game. So, I'm definitely fortunate to have played as long as I have, and had the career I had, aside from not being an everyday NHL player. So I can can hang my hat knowing I did everything I did in order to try to make it, to the NHL.
Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome. Did you, Matt or Evan, did you guys have any more questions before we started answering some of the comments?
Not that I could think of. I think I was gonna get right to the comments where we do have a couple questions. One of them goes back to earlier on where we talked about how your dad was always watching hockey and you got into hockey. But was there a moment that like made you want to be a pro hockey player? Or was there like an age where you realized you're gonna be like you really might be a pro hockey player?
I think, like I said earlier, just growing up in Canada and kind of everyone at the time being so involved or hockey being such an important thing in everyone's life, it was kind of consistently around me. So I can remember coming home from school, playing road hockey with all my buddies, going out in the morning when I was young. My dad had a rink in our backyard and, shooting pucks and goofing around thinking I was scoring the NHL winner at 6:30 in the morning. Little things like that when I was young, are obviously something I dreamed of. But in terms of when I actually thought, it could be a realistic goal that I could be an NHL player or a professional player, would be getting drafted at the NHL level. I think that's when I finally realized that you're in such a small percentage of hockey players in the world to be able to get drafted. And of course there's players that go on to have great careers that aren't drafted and all that and the other. But yeah, I would say that would be the one point where I thought, I can make a serious go of this.
What was it like getting drafted? Like, did you get the call from Sutter? Did you get a call from a representative?
Yeah, so I got a call from my agent first, and then Daryl Sutter had called me after. So it was
dude, that's gotta be crazy.
Yeah, and obviously it's a pretty big name in the hockey world. The Sutter last name, so be able to get a call from him telling you that you've been drafted was a super cool experience for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then there's another question from New York Sewer Kid. What did you do with your first NHL paycheck? He says that because some guys just ball out and go crazy with their paycheck.
Yeah, so it would have been a signing bonus, and lucky for me, my dad, always he had a impactful. He's impactful on what I do with my life and what I did with my life at the time. So I invested my money into a couple apartments when I was young, and did that. I did buy a car, but nothing crazy. So I had
not a bad way.
Properties that ended up being worth a lot more, 15 years down the road than the car was. That's for sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one more from New York Sewer Kid before we wrap up. He also is asking, besides the logistics being the best in the metro, minimizing travel, what makes New York a highly sought after place? And I know you talked about how like Hartford was, but he wants to know, does the team give you more freedom? Is it because your name's bigger with the spotlights?
So why are the New York Rangers so big is basically the general question.
Kind of sounds like a little bit, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a loaded question.
I mean, even being in Europe, it's a place where all these Europeans want to go. It's New York, it's all the things associated with New York. And then you got MSG, which is, one of the biggest, most popular rinks of all time in all the world. So you have all these like little tiny things that add up into one big bubble. And I think it's pretty appealing to a lot of players. I mean, would you rather be in New York City or Winnipeg, Manitoba?
Right. A Winnipeg reference. We fit her in a Winnipeg reference.
Yeah, yes. And no offense to Winnipeg, because I always had a great time when the Manitoba Moose had a team there in the American League. It was always a fun place. But you know what I'm saying. It's really hard to compare New York to some of the other cities in the NHL, along with the historic franchise and everything else they have going for them.
That's awesome. I love that Winnipeg reference. We poke slight fun at Winnipeg quite often here, so I love that came up.
Yeah, that was just poetic.
That was perfect. Oh man.
All right, we'll wrap things up here. Thank you so much, Devin, again for coming on. We appreciate your time a lot.
You're the man, dude.
Yeah.
No
And
problem. Thanks
congratulations
for
again
having me,
on
guys.
another great career.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, guys. It was a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.